The sun had barely risen over Manila, yet the streets were already alive with movement. Jeepneys rumbled past in bright streaks of color, vendors called out their morning deals, and schoolchildren weaved through the crowds with backpacks bouncing on their shoulders. In the middle of this everyday chaos stood a small wooden cart draped with a faded umbrella, Emma Sophie's family snack stand. At just 14, Emma Sophie had become her mother's quiet little helper. While her mother arranged trays of suman and banana Q, Emma prepared her small portable speaker, the one she'd bought secondhand with months of saved coins. Singing wasn't just something she loved, it was how she helped bring in extra income. People bought more snacks when she sang, and she never forgot that. She took a deep breath, clutching the microphone with both hands. Her voice began softly, like a breeze brushing against the noise-filled street. But as she stepped into the chorus, her tone grew fuller, richer, rising above the honking horns and chatter. Her voice carried a warmth that made strangers turn their heads in surprise. Some paused mid-walk, drawn in by the unexpected purity of her sound. A small crowd formed, tricycle drivers finishing their shift, office workers sipping morning coffee, children tugging at their parents' shirts. Among them stood a foreign tourist holding a phone, recording her quietly with a look of disbelief. Emma sang with her eyes closed, pouring every hidden dream into the melody. She imagined singing on a real stage one day, though she barely said such things out loud. In that moment, the busy Manila street faded away. It was just her and the song. She didn't know it yet, but the video being recorded would soon travel far beyond these streets, far enough to change her life forever. 3 days had passed since Emma Sophie's performance on the Manila sidewalk, and life had returned to its usual rhythm, at least, that's what she thought. She swept around the snack cart, humming softly while her mother packed snacks into small paper bags. But her phone, old and slightly cracked, kept buzzing non-stop in her pocket. At first, she ignored it. She didn't get many messages besides her classmates asking about homework. But when the buzzing became constant, over 100 notifications within minutes, she finally pulled it out. What she saw made her heart stop. A video of her singing, the very one the tourist had recorded, had gone viral. Not just a few thousand views, millions. Her name was trending. People from different countries were sharing her voice, leaving comments like, "This girl is world-class." And, "Someone get her on a big stage." Emma's mother noticed her shocked expression. "Anik, what's wrong?" Emma wordlessly showed her the screen. Her mother gasped, hand over her mouth, tears instantly forming in her eyes, not from fear, but from overwhelming pride. Before they could even process what was happening, a new email notification appeared. Emma hesitated, then tapped it open. The logo at the top made her breath hitch. America's Got Talent, official invitation. The email explained that the producers had seen her viral video and wanted her to audition in person in Los Angeles. They were even offering to arrange her travel. Emma's hands began to tremble. Her mother sat beside her, gripping her shoulders, crying softly. Opportunities like this didn't come to girls like her, not from the crowded streets of Manila. But this time, fate had chosen her. And for the first time, Emma Sophie allowed herself to imagine something bigger, standing on a world stage, showing everyone the voice she once only shared with passing strangers. Emma Sophie had never been on an airplane before. By the time she arrived in Los Angeles, her stomach was a mix of excitement and nerves. But nothing compared to the moment she stepped backstage at America's Got Talent. The air buzzed with energy, contestants practicing, producers rushing around, cameras rolling. Everything felt huge, overwhelming, unreal. A producer handed her a microphone and gently guided her toward the stage entrance. "You'll do great," he said with a reassuring smile. But Emma's hands were cold, her heart pounding like a drum inside her chest. From behind the curtain, she could hear the audience cheering, thousands of voices blending into one thunderous wave. She peeked through a small gap and saw the judges' table glowing under bright white lights. Heidi clapped for the previous act, Sophia chatted with Howie, and Simon Cowell, stern, sharp-eyed, sat with his arms crossed as he prepared for the next contestant. Next up, Emma Sophie from the Philippines. The announcer called. Emma inhaled sharply. This was it. She walked out slowly, the massive stage swallowing her tiny figure. The crowd quieted, curious. Someone in the audience shouted, "You got this." But her ears were buzzing too loudly to focus. Simon leaned forward, studying her. "Hello," he said. "What's your name?" Emma Sophie," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "And what brings you here today?" She swallowed hard. I want to make my mom proud. A soft, ah, rippled through the audience. When the music track began to play, Emma closed her eyes. She remembered the Manila sidewalk, the warm morning sun, her mother's smile. She steadied her breath. Then, trembling but determined, she lifted the microphone and sang the very first note, praying it would carry her courage with it. The first note slipped from Emma Sophie's lips like a single drop of light, gentle, trembling, but pure. The audience leaned in instinctively, unsure if such a small, shy girl could hold the massive stage. But then she moved into the next line, her voice growing steadier, fuller, and suddenly something in the theater shifted. A hush fell, her tone soared effortlessly, rich and emotional, filling every corner of the room. Her voice carried a depth that didn't match her age, raw, honest, almost haunting. It was the kind of voice that didn't just entertain, it told a story. The melody rose, weaving through the rafters like it belonged there, as if the stage had been waiting for her arrival. Camera operators stopped adjusting their equipment and simply listened. Audience members began covering their mouths, eyes widening in disbelief. A mother in the front row squeezed her child's hand and whispered, "She's incredible." Heidi looked at Simon with raised eyebrows. Sophia placed a hand over her heart. Even Howie, usually quick with jokes, sat perfectly still. And Simon, stoic, famously difficult to impress, slowly leaned forward, his expression softening. There was something almost vulnerable in his eyes, as if he recognized greatness the instant it revealed itself. As Emma soared into the high notes, her voice cracked slightly, not from weakness, but from emotion. That single moment of vulnerability made the performance even more powerful. Tears began to shimmer across several faces in the crowd. By the time she reached the final note, holding it longer than anyone expected, the entire auditorium had frozen in awe. Then, silence. A heartbeat later, the crowd erupted into a roaring standing ovation, shaking the theater with cheers. Emma Sophie opened her eyes, breath trembling, overwhelmed. She had done it. The cheers thundered across the theater, echoing like a giant heartbeat. Emma Sophie stood frozen in the center of the stage, her tiny hands pressed against her chest, tears already spilling down her cheeks. She had dreamed of applause, but nothing like this. The entire audience was on their feet, clapping, shouting her name, waving their arms as if trying to lift her higher. The judges rose one by one, first Heidi, then Sophia, then Howie. But Emma's eyes drifted to the last judge still seated, Simon Cowell. He stared at her for a long moment, his face unreadable, his fingers interlaced on the table. The room began to quiet again, everyone waiting for what he would say. Finally, he stood. The crowd gasped. "Emma Sophie," Simon began, his voice slower, softer than usual. "I don't say this often. In fact, I almost never say it. But what you just did," he paused, letting the anticipation build. "That was extraordinary, truly extraordinary." Emma wiped her tears with trembling fingers. "You didn't just sing," Simon continued. "You touched every single person in this room. Your voice is one in a million." The audience erupted again, but Simon wasn't finished. He glanced at the golden buzzer. Emma's breath caught. She didn't dare hope, not yet. Then Simon shook his head slightly, smiling. "Actually, that's not enough." And with a sudden, decisive motion, he slammed his hand down onto the golden buzzer. A burst of golden confetti exploded from above, raining down on Emma like a glittering storm. She gasped, covering her mouth as her knees buckled from emotion. Her mother ran onto the stage from the sidelines, embracing her tightly as the crowd roared. Simon looked up at her, warm and sincere. "Welcome to the world stage, Emma Sophie." In that shimmering moment, she knew her life would never be the same again.